Hello YouTube, it's Kyle. I am back with another reading update. It's been a while. I don't even know how long. Probably over a month, I think, since my last video. But I've been busy reading. I've got a few books that I want to talk about, let you know what I've been reading since my last video. It is now a Saturday. There's a truck going by very slowly. Did I just say it's Saturday? It's not Saturday. It's a Sunday. I've had the last week off. It was Thanksgiving last week. We got Thursday and Friday off of work. I took Monday through Wednesday off. So I've been out of work for like over a week now. One of my goals for my vacation was like, I'm going to make a booktube video. And of course I wait until Sunday night before I return to work to actually do it because I've been busy with other things. Actually got a lot of stuff done on my vacation, which was good. Anyway, let me update you with the stuff that I have read since my last video. So the first book is Skeletons in the Closet by Jean-Patrick Manchette. This is a French noir book from the 70s, I believe. Copyright 1976 by Edition Gallimard. So yeah, I haven't read too much like noir detective fiction. I read The Big Sleep by Raymond Chandler last year, which like the vibes, impeccable. Great vibes in the book, of the Chandler book. The actual like story, pretty hard to follow. It's kind of just like made up. Well, of course it's made up, but it's like it's made up as he's. It seems like he made it up as he was going. He doesn't know where this story's going. Raymond Chandler. Jean-Patrick Manchette. The plotting I thought was a little bit better than Chandler. I enjoyed this book more than the Big Sleep that I read last year. 100% absolutely influenced by Chandler, which I think is like a theme of my reading, is that I like a lot of things that were influenced by Chandler and by noir fiction, like The Big Lebowski, one of my favorite movies of all time, 100% is a send-up of that kind of stuff. What else? Thomas Pynchon, I think, absolutely pulls a bunch from detective fiction. Murakami, like the vibes that are great in Murakami. There's stuff I don't like about Murakami, but Murakami arguably is one of the like first serious writers that I started reading when I was a kid. And what I like about Murakami, what I think everyone likes about Murakami, is the vibes, and the vibes are Raymond Chandler. They're noir, right? But they're set in Japan. Anyway, this book was good. It's been a while since I read it at this point, so I don't even really remember what it's about. So there's a detective, Eugene Tarpon, who's a former cop. This is after World War II. He's a former cop. He did some bad things when he was on the force. Now he's a detective. He kind of wants to like do good in the world. And I kind of liked, one thing I liked more about Tarpon compared to Chandler's protagonist, whose name I can't remember, even though he's really famous, is that he's more of a good guy, in that he's like, he's like hard drinking. You know, actually, he keeps, the other people are more hard drinking, and they keep trying to get him to drink, and he keeps being like, no, I can't have another. But anyway, he's hard drink. It's got this like noir detective, hard drinking, hard masculine edge to it. But at the same time, he's like, he has this ethos where he wants to do good in the world. and part of it is it seems like he wants to atone for some of the bad things he did when he was in the French army. Or was he in the army or was he a gendarme? I don't remember. But anyway, he did some bad things in his past in the service of the state, and now he wants to do some good things. So this book is kind of like a romp. There's so you've got this like older washed up detective who's like trying to redeem himself. He's the main character. You've got his old buddy from the army who is this hard drinking older guy. He's kind of wild. There's this like younger woman who's smarter than all of them and who like basically solves everything on her own. I don't remember her name, but she's a cool character. It's kind of weird. There's some stuff that's very like, seems very French from the 70s, where it's like this older guy in his 50s who's like being seduced by this like gorgeous, brilliant 20-year-old intellectual French artsy woman. Like there's some kind of fantasy thing going on there. And trigger warning, there is some like sexual assault stuff that happens in this that's kind of, I don't think any of it it's kind of like off camera, but like they talk about it happening. And I'm kind of just rambling because I don't really remember what this is about. Basically, how does it starts with, there's this old woman comes into the detective agency, and her daughter is missing, I think, and that's what Tarpon starts trying. That's like the initial case that he picks up, and then it kind of devolves into like there's this stuff from World War II that's left over, and these people who like were part of the French. What is it? The Vichy government? Vichy, is that the government that was in power in the interim, like during the German occupation in France? Anyway, there's French collaborators with the Germans, former collaborators with the Germans, who have some underhanded dealings going on, and basically he unravels this like vaster conspiracy. There's like this new age movement. There's this new age movement that's like a new age church or like a health retreat kind of. It's kind of like both. It's like a cult, and like the cult runs this like health retreat that people can pay to go to. That's how they make their money. But they also, the bigger thing is they make their money from selling heroin, if I remember right. Some kind of drug. I think it was heroin. But anyway, so he uncovers this big like scandal. And I don't think that any of this, I'm saying all this, it's not really spoiled. Like, I don't really think the plot of this can be spoiled, because really like the plot is kind of nonsensical. Like it's kind of, each chapter is kind of self-contained. And at the end of the chapter, there's like a cliffhanger that the next chapter kind of goes into. It's like each chapter is kind of like an episode in like a serial television show or something. Anyway, this was fun. Not super deep, but I read it in a couple of days and I had a lot of fun with it. So this is Skeletons in the Closet, Jean-Patrick Manchette. If you are looking for a kind of fun and quirky but noir book that's very French, I would recommend it. The next thing I read was The Lonely Passion of Judith Hearne. Judith Hearne. It's been a while since I read both of these. This one I really, really liked. Of all the books I'm going to talk about, I think that it was probably my favorite. So this book is set in Ireland I think it was published in the 50s, and I think it's set in that time period. It was published in 1955. It was originally published as Judith Hearne, and then it was republished later as The Lonely Passion of Judith Hearne. But anyway, the book opens with this Catholic Irish woman who's living in Belfast, and she's just moved into this new apartment, and her name is Judith. That's Judith Hearne, the titular character here. She's just moved into this new apartment. She's unpacking her stuff, and like the first thing she unpacks is this like portrait of the Sacred Heart that she hangs over her bed, and then she's got this like portrait of her dead aunt who like sits on her dresser at the foot of the bed looking over her, so she like sleeps in between Jesus and her aunt. And basically she's like this really prim and proper kind of uptight Catholic woman. She's older. I think she's in her 30s or her 40s maybe, and she's older. She's unmarried. She's just had a lot of trouble with men throughout her life. Like she's never really had any men who are interested in her, and she is interested in men, but she can't get any men who are interested in her. And it kind of comes out that like she was an orphan, her aunt took her in, and her aunt became ill, and she was her aunt's caretaker for like a decade or something. And so Judith kind of like gave up her youth to care for her aunt. And now she's kind of like, her aunt's been dead for a year or two, I think, when the book starts. And she's kind of like trying to find herself in this new life without her aunt, and without any kind of like, she seems unmoored in that she like, as a Catholic woman in Belfast in the 50s, like she's 40 years old. She's supposed to be married and like have a family at this point, and she doesn't. And she doesn't feel, she feels kind of like purposeless and purposeless and adrift. And like she doesn't know what to do with her life. And anyway, it starts out, I thought that it was going to be this like comedy of manners kind of thing where, you know, so Judith is this very kind of uptight, proper Catholic woman. And she moves in. There's this host of characters who live in the like, did I call it a boarding house? It's not really a boarding house. She's just renting an apartment, like renting a room in an apartment. And the other boarders who are, is that a boarding house? I feel like a boarding house is a different thing. I don't know. Anyway, she's renting a room in this apartment. The other people who are there are all kind of like eccentric. There's the landlady herself and her son, who is like an adult man. He's like in his 20s. It seems like he's like a perpetual student. He's been in school, in college for like a decade now. He sees himself as a poet, and it's just really laying on thick like the ridiculousness of the son of this character, and the mother just absolutely like doting on him and spoiling him, and you know, treating this adult man like he's a child. And then there's the landlady's brother has come back from America, and Judith kind of like, he's this kind of like, he acts like he's a New Yorker, because he's lived in New York for a while, and so he's got this like tough guy New York American attitude, which Judith thinks is like, she's clearly like attracted to it and drawn to it, because she keeps hanging out with him and flirting with him, and she's excited because he returns some of her interests, and like she's never had a man who returns her interest before. But at the same time, like in her, you're following mostly in like close third person or free and direct discourse. I think it's not in first person, right? It's in like close third person, free and direct discourse, mostly through Judith, but it kind of the focalization kind of moves around through all the characters at different points, and even through like some random like shopkeepers and stuff like that who only appear in a scene. It's getting kind of dark in here, isn't it? But anyway, so it kind of starts off being this kind of like comical, like farcical kind of thing where it's like uptight Judith Hearne is kind of forced to live with these kind of like zany, crazy characters. It was kind of like Jane Austen-y at first, I thought. But then it takes an absolutely wild turn where like this is one of the few times in my life where I was like reading a book and my jaw like literally dropped open. I was like, oh my god, like it took a turn. Which this I will not spoil what that turn is, but basically it takes a turn, and then the book kind of goes absolutely wild at that point. It's really exciting. It's a really interesting read. The characters are all great. I've never read anything else by Brian Moore. I've never even heard of this book before. I just found this randomly in a Goodwill, and I bought it because it's an NYRB, and I just buy every NYRB that I find at a Goodwill. So yeah, this was an absolutely great find. Highly recommend it. Let me know if you've read it. I think that you would enjoy it. Let's see. The next book that I read, this is probably going to be controversial, but it's The Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath, and I did not really enjoy this. I've never read Sylvia Plath before. I'm from Western Massachusetts, where Sylvia Plath went to Smith in Northampton, and that's the area that I grew up. And so there's so much stuff about Sylvia Plath in Northampton, and it's a big part of like the culture of growing up that like this is our cultural heritage is Sylvia Plath, because she went to Smith. Sylvia Plath and Emily Dickinson. But anyway, Emily Dickinson I love. Sylvia Plath I've never read anything by her before, I don't think. So yeah, this book I ended up not loving it. It was kind of so if I read the back of it, I'm not actually going to read the blurb, but the blurb makes it sound like this is going to be like this young, it sounds very autobiographical. It's this young woman who's like on her summer break from her first semester at a women's college in Western Massachusetts, and she has an internship at a publishing company in New York City, and the back makes it sound like it's kind of going to be this coming of age thing where she's experiencing the city for the first time, and there is some of that, but really like the stuff that's in New York probably takes up maybe like a quarter of the book, maybe like a third of the book. And really what it is she has a kind of a breakdown basically, and the book is about her getting through that, but it also doesn't seem like she really does get through it. And so really this book was kind of just hard for me to read. It's a very serious depiction of mental illness that kind of hit I have experience with my own mental illnesses, and people I love have had mental illness, and I've had experiences caring for them and helping them through that, and I guess I don't really know what, like, I think that maybe if I read this at a different point in my life, I would like it more. But instead, I kind of came away from this not liking the narrator. Like, really, really kind of, I wouldn't say that I dislike her, but like she just seems like she needs help. And she's not really getting the help that she needs. And I kind of feel like what is the point of this book? Like, what is this book trying to say? I'm not really sure. And like, I don't know who I would give this book to. Like, I feel like if I had read this book when I was a younger person and when I was dealing with depression, which honestly, my depression that I've experienced, not really like what Sylvia describes here. Like, what she describes sounds like psychosis to me more than anything. Like, she's having these paranoid fantasies that kind of like drive all of her thinking. And that's kind of one of the things that I found it so frustrating to read, is you get into these like paranoid cycles of thought where she thinks that everyone is out to get her, and she's just like misreading and misunderstanding everything. And I found it just absolutely draining to read. And then I got through it, and I'm like, I don't know what the point of this was. Like, what did this tell me? What did I learn from this? I don't really know. I don't feel like I got a lot out of it. I don't feel like I would give this book to someone who is going through that kind of thing, because I feel like this would exacerbate it. Like, this is going to make things worse. And yeah, so I don't know. People who love this book, tell me why you love it. I read like a lot of the reviews on Goodreads make it sound like this is and I know that it's kind of held up as like a feminist novel that's kind of like, I read a lot of reviews that were talking about how like it's kind of like Esther's experiences with like as a woman that caused her to have this breakdown. But really, I didn't feel that from reading it. I didn't feel so much that her, like, I didn't feel like her breakdown was the result of societal pressures or of like societal pressures on her for having to fit into the role of being a woman, because she flouts those roles all the time. Right? Like, she seems very comfortable flouting those roles. It doesn't seem like her role as a woman is what's causing her anxiety or discomfort. It seems like what causes her breakdown is that she has these irrational, paranoid thoughts that she can't get over, and that you're forced to also go through as the reader. And so, yeah, I really did not enjoy this book. Enjoy's a bad word, because I think maybe you're not supposed to enjoy this book. And I know that a lot of people really like this book. So yeah, I'm not saying it's a bad book, but for me, absolutely did not resonate with me. And maybe if I had read it at a different part of my life, I would like it more. But yeah. If you love this book, tell me why. I'd be glad to know. But yeah, that was The Bell Jar. Also, this edition from Faber and Faber, absolutely ugly. Like, not that the woman on the cover is ugly, but just like the design of this thing. I do not like this book. Maybe that contributed to why I didn't like it so much too. I don't know. I'm just BSing at this point. Next thing I read was The Merchant of Venice by William Shakespeare. It's been a while since I read Shakespeare. In college, I took a few Shakespeare classes. Really, I think I took like 3 or 4 semesters of Shakespeare classes. So I've read a good amount of Shakespeare, I think, but I've read more than the average person, but I'm sure there are many people who've read a lot more than me. But I never read The Merchant of Venice. I I've been in kind of I've been in kind of a like depressed mood lately, which that may be part of why the bell jar didn't resonate with me so much. It didn't, yeah, I don't know. But anyway, the reason I picked this up is that the opening lines of this, spoken by Antonio, are, "In sooth, I know not why I am so sad. It wearies me. You say it wearies you, but how I caught it, found it, or came by it, what stuff 'tis made of, or whereof it is born, I am to learn. And such a want-wit sadness makes of me that I have much ado to know myself." Like, what a beautiful opening line by Antonio. And so, let's see. The Merchant of Venice follows not Antonio so much. It opens with Antonio and Antonio's deep sadness that he doesn't know where this emotion is coming from, but he feels a deep sadness. And his friend, I don't even remember his name, begins with a B, right? What is his name? Bassanio. Bassanio is kind of the main character-ish, maybe? Maybe Shylock is the main character. I mean, this is one of the interesting things about Shakespeare, right? And about this play is you can read it so many different ways. But anyway, so back to my quick plot summary, and maybe as I'm describing it, I'll get my head wrapped around it a little bit. It opens with Antonio talking about his deep sadness that he doesn't know where it's coming from. Bassanio is in love with this woman. Well, is he in love with her? Basically, I don't think he's not in love with her because he's never met her before. But basically, there's this woman, Portia, and she lives on this island or something. And her father is dead, and in his will, he left this like contest to gain Portia's hand in marriage. There's like these 3 chests, one of gold, one of silver, and one of lead. And like potential suitors come to the island and they have to choose one of these, what did I call it? A casket? Is that what I called it? One of these chests. It's like a chest. They have to choose one of these things. And if you choose the correct one, you win Portia's hand in marriage. And Portia doesn't have a say in this really, because this was in her father's will, and thus it has been spoken. And so anyway, Bassanio is like, "Hey, Antonio, I know that like I've fallen on hard times. I don't have any money. But I heard about this deal where if you go to this island, and Portia's also rich. So if you go to this island and there's this contest where you have to like pick a chest, and if you pick the right one, you get to marry this like beautiful woman, Portia, who is also rich. And like this, if I do this could really turn my life around. And like, you've always been a good friend to me, Antonio, so can you lend me some money?" And so he's asking Antonio for money because Antonio is the merchant of Venice. Antonio is a merchant. He owns a bunch of different ships, trading ships that trade all around the world. And so Antonio's like, "Well, I all of my capital right now is invested." There's a bunch of stuff about like interesting things about capital and money in here. But anyway, and finance capital. Really. But anyway, all of Antonio's capital is tied up right now in his various ships and cargo and business endeavors. And so he doesn't have any money that he can lend. But Antonio has really good credit. And so Antonio tells Bassanio to go to Shylock, who is this Jewish moneylender, and tell Shylock that you can get whatever money you need on Antonio's credit. And so there's a lot of like racist stereotypes and tropes in the play around Shylock, this Jewish moneylender, and how he's, this usurious, like, money lender who's stealing money from everyone and abusing his power and things like that, and there's just lots of really racist anti-Semitic stuff in here. But I think one of the questions is like I was saying, Shylock, so Shylock lends the money. Let me finish with my plot summary here. Shylock lends the money to Bassanio on the condition that if the funds aren't returned, what he wants is a pound of flesh from Antonio. He's not going to charge any interest. All he wants is a pound of flesh. And Shylock has these speeches where he's like, he really hates the Christians and these people who he's lended money to in Venice, because they all treat him like garbage and they're all racist and they all hate him. And he's like, I hate them. And so what Shylock wants is revenge on Antonio, really just as like a figure, a metonymy of Venetian society as a whole, Venetian Christian society. So really, like, Shylock is like tenting his fingers and like being like, oh, I really hope that you can't pay me back, so I get to take a pound of flesh from Antonio. Anyway, so that's the setup of the story, and basically, there's a few things going on. One of it is that there's this really interesting dynamic with Portia and her like maidservant, whose name I can't remember. Nerissa. Her like handmaid Nerissa. Portia is kind of like I was saying, she's bound to this, she's bound to the will of her father, like both the will is in his desires, and also like the literal legal document of his will is going to define the rest of her life, and she's kind of trapped there. But at the same time, like a lot of the stuff that's following Portia is about the ways that she gets control over her own destiny in spite of that, kind of like the way that she kind of plays against it, so that it seems like everything is going by her father's plan or going by her husband Bassanio's plan, but really like she's pulling the strings behind the scene. That's one interesting thing that's going on. There's also there's like the interesting stuff around Shylock too, is like is the play actually racist, or is Shylock this comic figure that we're supposed to be laughing at? Because, ultimately, like things end terribly for Shylock. He loses everything. He doesn't get his money back. He doesn't get a pound of flesh. They take all of the state of Venice takes all of his belongings for the most part. His daughter abandons him and converts to Christianity and marries a Christian, and he's abandoned, and things end terribly for Shylock. And are we supposed to be laughing at him? Or is Shylock, is he a tragic figure? Like, are we supposed to sympathize with him? And I think in a lot of ways we are supposed to sympathize with him. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know enough, honestly, to comment on that in a way that's thoughtful and useful to the conversation, I don't think. But it is it's one of the things that I like about, not just this play, but Shakespeare's plays in general, is that they're, even if we read Shylock as this, like Jewish, as this racist caricature that's supposed to be like a comedic trope, even if you read him like that, Shakespeare's added enough depth to his character that you can read him as a tragic figure. They're like he's such a great psychologist and a great depictor of character. Anyway, one thing I was disappointed in, not enough about Antonio's deep sadness that he doesn't know where it's coming from. I wish they had gotten into that a little bit more, because that opening line is what pulled me into this. But really, after that first like act, I don't think it gets brought up again. So yeah, I would say Merchant of Venice, not my favorite Shakespeare play that I've ever read. A lot of racist stuff in it, but still really interesting. And I don't think that you should not read it because there's racist stuff in it. You should just be aware that there's racist stuff in it. Yeah, I recommend it. And maybe it's not racist. Not that there are racist things in it, but maybe the play. Basically, you can read this however you want to read it, right? And if you want to read it that it's a tragic depiction of Shylock, and maybe like if you can do a reparative reading, you can recover Shylock from this, and that's the beauty of good literature. Anyway, that was The Merchant of Venice. It's getting on, 36 minutes now, and I'm still talking, but this is the last book, is T. Singer by, I can't remember the guy's name, Dag Solstad, right? I said that, and I can't even read it. I don't even know where it says it up there, I think. But it's backwards, and I can't read it. Anyway, so this book is by a pretty contemporary author. I think this was published in the mid-2000s. Nope. Well, it was published in Norwegian in 1999, it looks like, and it was translated to English in 2018. This is a copy from New Directions. So, yeah, this is kind of contemporary Norwegian literature that's 25 years old at this point. But it follows this guy. It's set in the 80s for the most part, but it kind of spans maybe like a decade from like I think it's from like the early 80s to the end of the 80s. But basically it follows the adulthood of this man, T. Singer, who kind of, I mean, this artwork where it's like this guy without a face and he's got this like wind-up key in the back is really a good symbol for this whole book, right? Like this is pretty good artwork. It's very on the nose, because basically like T. Singer, his desire in life is to kind of like be in the background. He doesn't want to be in the front. He doesn't want to be noticed by people. He's not like super shy. Like on some level, I kind of identified with him because as I'm not the most extroverted person. I don't necessarily want to be the center of attention, which is a lot of what he's talking about. But at the same time, like he also doesn't seem all that withdrawn or introverted to me either. He's a very affable guy. He's got a lot of friends. He goes to parties and dinners with his friends and stuff, but he doesn't have a lot of aspirations, doesn't really know what he wants to do with his life, doesn't want to be the center of attention. A lot of it seems like he has this fear of what other people, actually that's 100% what it is now that I'm saying it. He has this fear of what other people will think about him if he does anything. Really, he has a fear of what other people will think of him. So he doesn't want to do anything that draws attention to himself that would get other people thinking of him. Like, he doesn't want to do anything unusual. He doesn't want to have any distinguishing features. He doesn't want anything that would give any person any reason to think about him. And so he lives this kind of like bland, really bland, boring existence. He's in the beginning, he's like a perpetual student kind of, or this kind of takes place before the narrative starts happening. But in his earlier life, he was a perpetual student. He was in school for like over a in university for like over a decade. Like he would take a couple of classes a semester while also working. And he couldn't really ever settle on what he wanted to do. And then eventually he decides he's going to become a librarian because it seems kind of easy, and like a secure career path, which like, as an aside, like, wouldn't that be nice if that was an easy, secure, stable career path still? Some great, it would have been nice to live in the 80s, I guess. Anyway, so he becomes a librarian. He moves to this kind of like rural town, the middle of nowhere in Norway. He ends up meeting a woman, and they get married. And it's kind of just he has there's a little bit of a twist that happens, but not really. Like, some dramatic things happen in his life, but he really, like, he kind of just, he never really changes. He never really gets any distinguishing features about him, and yeah, he continues to stay in the background, which is what he wanted to do. And I don't know, parts of this, I'm still not sure how I feel about this book. I liked it. Parts of it really dragged. There's one scene in particular when he first moves to the town where he meets this guy, Adam Ide, I think his name was, something like that, who's like the president, or like the head of this like hydroelectric company that's run out of not of the whole company, but of like the regional sector of that company in the town that he's living in now. Anyway, there's this really long conversation. He meets him on the train, and then they go back to his house, and it just goes on forever. And that part of the book I found really tedious. And the rest of it, like the thing about this book is it's so frustrating because Singer kind of just pushes, he's always just pushing people away from him. He doesn't really want to have close relationships with anyone, mostly because it seems like he's afraid he's afraid of getting close to anyone. He's afraid of anyone knowing anything about him because he doesn't want people thinking about him. And there's also like, there's just a lack of like self-reflection on his part too. Like, he doesn't even know anything about himself. Anyway, I would definitely read more Dag Solstad. I'd pick it up. It's a short book. It took a couple days to read it, maybe. So if it sounds interesting to you, kind of this like existential, you know, what is the point of life, and like, what is the good life kind of questions going on, but in the negative here, right? Like, this is what you're not supposed to do. Don't be like this guy. You know, have a little bit of personality. Anyway, that's everything that I've been reading. Yeah, this has gone on a bit. Yeah, I'm reading now Anna Karenina, rereading it. I read it, actually, I don't have the book up here with me, but I saw in the beginning of it, I signed my name in it in 2012 was the last time I read it. But I'm in the mood for, after all of these novels, there's something about like all of these and well, the 4 novels in one play here. There's just something about like a really big novel that you can get lost in. Like when I read, there's something unsatisfying about a short novel, a novel that's like under 500 pages, really. Which, like, I like them. I especially, you know, I really loved Judith Hearne here. This is a 5-star book for me. This was great. But really all of them except for The Bell Jar, like I liked reading them. But I need to get my head into something a little more immersive right now. And Anna Karenina has been calling to me again. So yeah, that's what I'm doing. Yeah. Talk to you guys later. Drop me a note in the comments below and I'll try and respond if I see it. And yeah, have a good day. See you guys.